Hey everyone, this is Corner once again, back with another video for Monster Hunter World Iceborne. In today's video, we're going to be looking into a more up-to-date version of a previous video that I made for Monster Hunter World Iceborne, which was the Breaking Safi video for the Safi'jiiva Siege. In my previous video, I gave you my personal approach and playstyle against the Safi'jiiva itself in order to guarantee myself the body part breaks, which is being focused at one body part at a time before breaking another part, and then being persistent in breaking that one body part until it breaks. Now that mostly focused on my personal playstyle and approach against the Safi'jiiva Siege itself. I did cover a very basic idea as to what damage type is most effective against what body part on the Safi'jiiva itself. However, it didn't really cover anything along the lines of what weapons I found to be most effective against which body part on the Safi'jiiva Siege itself. Now, there are many videos out there giving you an idea as to the kind of builds that you use against Safi'jiiva itself in order to break all the body parts. However, I find these to be very ineffective. And the reason for this is because using one weapon type only does not guarantee you every body part break. Some people might say yes it does, but from my personal experience in running the Safi'jiiva Siege repeatedly, what I found to be most effective is switching weapon types relative to the body part that I want to break. So rather than just using one weapon type at a time, I use multiple weapon types in order to break multiple body parts. So in this video, I'm hoping to give you an idea as to what weapon type to use relative to the body part that you want to break against the Safi'jiiva itself. So hopefully it gives you an idea as to what weapon types are most effective against what body part on the Safi'jiiva itself. Now before we go ahead and get started, I will say it at this point that your mileage may vary. In other words, it won't 100% guarantee your body part breaks if you're not very effective with these weapon types. This means that your personal skill, along with the approach that you're doing, and the teammates that you may have, will determine whether or not you break these body parts. Some body parts break easier than others, which guarantees you that body part break regardless of situation. However, having said that, if you're looking to break other body parts that are a little bit more difficult to break, then don't think of it as going to be 100% guaranteed, because these body parts will break depending on your situation. So your mileage may vary depending on the body part that you want to break. With all of that being said, let's go ahead and get started on what weapon types I find to be very effective against which body part on the Safi'jiiva itself. Now then, to start us off, we're going to be looking at long-range weapon when it comes to the Safi'jiiva Siege. This includes light bowgun, heavy bowgun, and the bow itself. When it comes to the long-range weapons, what you want to be aiming for is the back of the Safi'jiiva itself as well as the wings. Now when it comes to the back of the Safi'jiiva itself, as long as you're really good at aiming at the back of the Safi'jiiva itself and you have Part Breaker 3, more often than not, you probably will have broken this by the second phase, even the first phase, if you're really good at aiming at Safi'jiiva's back. What you want to be aiming for is just below where the spike is protruding on Safi'jiiva's back. And that pretty much guarantees you your part break on the Safi'jiiva itself, because the back is actually very easy to break with a long-range weapon. After that, you want to be aiming for the wings. Now take a pick at which wing you want to break first and stay on that wing until it's broken, and then move on to the other one. When it comes to the wings, there's actually a sweet spot on the wings themselves when you can deal higher damage than hitting the rest of the wings. Now when it comes to the wing itself, the sweet spot is the limbs that's holding the webbing of the wing themselves. Now you can aim for the other parts of the wing themselves, but I would highly advise trying to aim for that sweet spot, which is the limbs of the wings, because that's where you get the big numbers, guaranteeing yourself that easier part break on Safi'jiiva itself. Try to aim for that sweet spot to get as much damage out of it as possible so you can break it much more quickly, and then you can move on to the other wing. Now for light bowgun and heavy bowgun users, you have one more body part that you can break on the Safi'jiiva itself, and that is the Safi'jiiva's head. Now the reason for this is because Safi'jiiva's head is actually a very volatile area for melee players to actually attack. A lot of Safi'jiiva's attack focuses around the front of the Safi'jiiva itself, meaning that melee players will have a more difficult time trying to break Safi'jiiva's head because there's a lot of attack patterns on Safi'jiiva that could potentially hit them at close range. Meaning that when it comes to using a light bowgun and heavy bowgun, you have an effective distance between yourself and Safi'jiiva where you can actually avoid most of the attacks of Safi'jiiva itself. Now in terms of ammos that I would highly advise bringing against the Safi'jiiva itself, for light bowgun users, you have a sticky ammo and your rapid fire ammo that you can use against the Safi'jiiva itself. The sticky ammo is something that you would share with heavy bowgun users, and for heavy bowgun users, I would highly advise bringing a Pierce build with you. I highly advise against using a spread shot ammo because spread shot ammos are literally close range ammos. You're within melee distance between yourself and the Safi'jiiva, and you don't want that. You want to give yourself that relative distance between yourself and Safi'jiiva in order to avoid as much of the attacks as possible. So a Pierce ammo build is much better than a spread shot ammo build when it comes to heavy bowgun users. Now when it comes to the sticky ammo, the reason I highly advise bringing the sticky ammo is because of the fact that the sticky ammos themselves can actually knock down the Safi'jiiva itself, giving your teammates an opening to attack the Safi'jiiva's head or any other body parts that they may want to break. So this is a good way of giving your teammates an opportunity to attack the Safi'jiiva itself without having to worry about Safi'jiiva itself actually retaliating against any of the players. So I would highly advise bringing a sticky ammo as a way of controlling the Safi'jiiva itself by knocking it down, giving your teammates an opportunity to attack the Safi'jiiva itself. Now then, with the long-range weapons out of the way, let's go ahead and talk melee weapons. For melee weapons, you have to think about the damage type that your weapon has. There's two damage types in Monster Hunter World Iceborne, which is Severing and Blunt. Severing is basically every single weapon that's not hammer or hunting horn, so basically every other weapon in the game. Now, when it comes to Severing type weapons, what you want to aim for is either the forelegs, so the two front legs of the Safi'jiiva itself, or you want to aim for the tail. Now, depending on your personal skills on how well you do in terms of cutting tails on any other monster, you may want to go for the tail with the weapon type that you are using. If you're not very skilled at cutting tails or you just find it really annoying to actually hit Safi'jiiva's tail, then I would highly advise going for the forelegs. Now, for me personally, I'm very skilled at cutting Safi'jiiva's tail because I've practiced it repeatedly. I'm focused and persistent using a longsword or a switch axe. Having said that though, I have seen other people cut Safi'jiiva's tail using a sword and shield, using a great sword, even using a charge blade. So it's all relative to the skills that you have with the weapon type that you're using. It's not just going to be a case scenario that one weapon is more effective than the other. It's all about how skilled you are with the weapon type that you use, because any weapon type that's severing damage can cut the tail of the Safi'jiiva itself. If you're not very skilled at cutting Safi'jiiva's tail, don't try to cut it off if you're not going to be able to do it. Focus instead on the forelegs, which you can guarantee a body part break on if you're focused and persistent in breaking one leg at a time and then breaking the other. In fact, from my personal experience, I will definitely cut the tail first. That way, I can focus on the forelegs afterwards, but I've also seen other people focus on the forelegs first and then move on to the tail afterwards to try and cut it off. So it's all gonna be dependent on your personal experience regarding tail cutting on the Safi'jiiva itself. If you're very skilled at tail cutting, definitely go for the tail. If you're not very skilled at tail cutting, go for the forelegs, break one leg first and then move on to the other. That's my personal advice for severing type weapons. Now then, let's go ahead and take a look at blunt weapons, which is the hammer and the hunting horn. For the hammer bros and hunting horn duders out there, what you want to be aiming for is the hind legs first and then moving towards the head. This is kind of the opposite of the severing type weapons. So rather than going for the two front legs, you're going for the two back legs, and rather than going for the tail, you're going for the head. Personally, I would say definitely aim for the hind legs first because they break the easiest with a hammer or a hunting horn. You break those two parts guarantee, then you can aim for the head. From my personal experience, I've broken them so many times that by the second going up to the third phase, or even during the third phase, I will have guaranteed myself 2-part breaks with the hind legs alone. So definitely for hunting horn and hammer users, focus on the hind legs, so the two back legs, and then try to help with the head. Now the head itself is a little bit difficult for melee users of all types, just because of the fact that Safi'jiiva itself tends to move around quite a lot and it tends to shake its head around quite a lot due to the fact that it has a lot of laser-like attacks. So just bear that in mind when you're aiming for the head using a hammer or a hunting horn. Just bear in mind that it's gonna be a bit of a struggle to actually go against the head of the Safi'jiiva itself. However, having said that, you can definitely break those two hind legs first then you can aim for the head afterwards. No one's gonna stop you from trying to take down the Safi'jiiva's head, but I would highly advise breaking the hind legs first. Get yourself that guaranteed part break by being focused and persistent on the hind legs and then moving on towards the head. Now, hopefully that should give you an idea as to which weapon type and damage type to use against which body part on Safi'jiiva itself during the Safi'jiiva siege run. Now, the final body part I haven't mentioned yet is the chest, and the reason for this is because the best strategy for the chest itself is good old-fashioned sleep bombing. Now, you don't just want to randomly sleep bomb Safi'jiiva itself. What you want to do is you want to wait for the third phase of the Safi'jiiva siege, wait for Safi'jiiva to go into super critical state, and then force it to sleep so you can sleep bomb the chest. The reason you want it in super critical state is because that is when you deal the most damage. By putting it to sleep in super critical state, you deal so much damage on a single sleep bomb that any weapon type can eventually break the Safi'jiiva's chest during the rest of the run. Honestly, it's such a good strategy, but it's also very situational. If you're running it with a well-coordinated team, then you should be just fine. You eventually get that chest break because you're well-coordinated. However, if you're running with randoms, then your mileage may vary with this particular strategy, because some random people, they may not know the exact strategy that you're going for. Other people, they'll put it to sleep but not in super critical state. Others will put it in super critical state, force it to sleep, but then they sleep bomb the head instead. So it's very situational when you do it with randoms. In a well-coordinated team, you're fine, but with randoms, your mileage may vary. Now, that is pretty much it for this video. Hopefully, it gives you a better idea as to how to break the different body parts on Safi'jiiva itself in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. As a final word of advice, do use different weapon types, as I've said in the beginning, when you're fighting the Safi'jiiva itself, because it's better to have different weapon types for the different body parts that you want to break on Safi'jiiva itself, rather than just focusing on one weapon type and trying to break everything with one weapon type. There are many build videos out there that say that one weapon type is all that you need in order to break the different body parts on Safi'jiiva itself, but you're more than likely going to struggle by just using one weapon type, because now you're not taking into consideration the different resistances on Safi'jiiva's body parts depending on the damage and weapon type that you are using. If you take that into consideration and you swap out your equipment accordingly, alongside bringing in Part Breaker 3, then you have a much more effective chance of actually breaking Safi'jiiva's body parts rather than just sticking to the one weapon type. So my final advice is, do use different weapon types depending on the body part that you want to break on the Safi'jiiva itself, to make yourself guarantee more body part breaks than you would if you're just using a single weapon type. Now that is pretty much it for me for this video. If you enjoyed these videos, please feel free to leave a like on the video itself, as well as subscribe to the channel so you can go ahead and catch up on any future Monster Hunter content that I might be doing, as well as any other games that I might be playing in future. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Onward and upward.